Welcome back, everybody. Coming at you with my next James Bond review. I got The World Is Not Enough. Um, so this is probably the first James Bond movie that I remember when it came out, like it was a big deal, because I remember the game coming out. And that's basically how I got introduced to this story. And I don't remember how many more years it took until I saw, because I didn't see this one in theaters, um, which I'm kind of embarrassed to say, but I didn't see the first James Bond movie that I saw in theaters was actually Quantum of Solace, and I find that embarrassing. But I don't think I saw Dying of the Day in theaters, and I don't think I saw World Is Not Enough in theaters. Maybe I did, but I don't think I did. I think I would have remembered that. I think we rented The World Is Not Enough Blockbuster back in the day. That's probably where I saw it first, either that or Spike TV. But I think we rented it. Um, that being said, so this one I was really looking forward to because when I was doing my rankings these last couple times, after every Bond movie that I watch, I go and I try to re-rank them all just to kind of stay current with them and try to remember how I feel about them. And this one, it was sitting at my number one just because it was probably the one I was most anticipated to watch again because it'd been, I don't know, 5, 6 years, 7 years maybe since I've seen it. So how does it hold up? It's still pretty good. It's not my number one, I don't think anymore, or it's not in that class, but it's still up there for me as far as best Bond movies. So pros and cons. Every movie's got their pros and cons. Pierce Brosnan, this is probably him at his best playing James Bond. I think he's smooth, delivers every line properly, looks the part. His wardrobe, I especially like. One when he walks into Valentin Zukovsky's casino, and then the second when he at the end where he's at Maiden Tower and he's got his like tan suit, blue undershirt. I'd want a suit like that, to be honest. But yeah, he's good. So we'll do the cons first. Let's do the cons first. But we'll do the plot real quick. Brief synopsis of the plot. Uh, this man named King, Robert King, he basically there's something going on at the beginning of the movie where basically he's missing some money. A banker's trying to give him some money back, but there was a reason. Basically, some MI6 agent got killed for a list that King wanted. Um, Basically, King gets his money back, but as he gets his money back, he explodes and the money burns up or whatever. And then they're trying to track it down. Anyway, spoiler warning for anyone that hasn't seen this movie: go watch it and then come back. But basically, Electra, his daughter, is the one that killed him. She set up his little lapel pin to explode to ignite the money. There was like a chemical that was on the money. And yeah, so basically, they initially are going after her kidnapper because she was kidnapped years ago. It was a guy named Renard. Turns out him and Electra are working together. So that's the main plot, and then James Bond and MI6 are trying to put together the pieces, figure it out. Something to do with a nuclear warhead, a submarine. They're wanting to destroy the. I think it's in the Caspian Sea, but anyway, they're wanting to destroy like this area of oil, like Istanbul, and then like people would have to use the oil from her pipeline because that's what her family like does. Okay, so I think that's most of the plot. Christmas Jones, aka Denise Richards, she's in it. She's nothing great here, but I don't think she's as bad as people make it out to be. Like she has a few lines that are really bad, like are you just looking for a glimmer, or just like I don't know, some of her attitude, like where she's like, you need to be worried about me. Aside from that, she's fine. She's like window dressing. She's never going to be one of my top Bond girls. I would never really defend her performance, but she's I can watch the Bond movie and just fine. And to me, she's got to be better than like the last girl I just saw, Mary Goodnight in Man with the Golden Gun. Okay, so cons of this movie. Let's start with the cons first. Denise Richards, like I said, doesn't make for a great Bond girl. Um, I will say, like after rewatching this film, I don't think it's as good as I remember it. There's not a whole lot that I think I'm like, wow, that was amazing. I would say the part that maybe I was the least impressed with that I thought I would like was probably the skiing sequence where they get attacked by those helicopters, or not their helicopters, they're like snowmobiles that have like a parachute behind it where they're able to like steer and they're like gunning people down from the air. Okay, so I thought that sequence was going to be better than I remember. It wasn't. It wasn't all that entertaining, to be honest, because it doesn't feel like they're going all that fast, or maybe that's just the way they edited it. But it just seemed to like drag along, and it doesn't seem like it was all that entertaining. Aside from that, the opening sequence is probably one of my favorites in the whole series. Him at the bank, him getting away, and then him basically the cigar girl. And I love I love that because that's what her name is as far as like in the game. That's how I remember her, is the cigar girl. But I really like him, that chase sequence in the boats at the beginning. I love that, and then I love how they introduce the song sequence where basically she shoots the air balloon, he's falling, and then he finally like catches himself, but you can tell like he jacked himself up, and then they have like the opening sequence of him like falling. I love that. Or he's hanging there at first, but I love that. The song "The World Is Not Enough," it's one of my favorites. I just ranked the songs. I think I had it like number 2 or 3. It's up there for me. So yeah, I think the band Garbage, I think they did a great job. Well, I need to talk about the cons. I know I said that. Just like I said, not as crisp as I remember. And I think they did one mistake. They should have kept you guessing a little bit longer about Elektra being good or bad, because they kind of tip it off a little bit too early. But aside from that, the pros, the girl that plays Elektra, I think I want to say her name starts with Sophie. Yeah, Sophie Marceau. She's great. Like, I think she's a great actress, and especially in this film, she really does buy it. Like at the beginning of the movie, I can't. If you're watching it fresh, you're like, no, she seems like a typical girl that's in distress that Bond would help. So you don't really get the sense that she's bad up until, I know, she does like some weird stuff, like the stuff at the casino. You're like, why is she just throwing away $1 million? That's weird. But yeah, like her performance is great. M actually has more to do in this movie than I would say every other movie aside from Skyfall. So I liked that. It gave Judi Dench, like, there was an extra incentive. Like the very beginning of this movie, how it goes into like Elektra being kidnapped and M, Bond's trying to look at Elektra's file and it's not open, like it's closed off, and he's like, only you have access to that. Why are you locking it down? Well, she locked it down because she was ashamed because Elektra got tortured because M was like, yeah, don't pay the ransom money. We'll figure out something else. So I like that aspect of adding extra stuff to M. That really Elektra, it's not anything to do with James, really. It's more that she wants to get payback on, one, her father, and two, M. She tries to take them both out. She gets her father, but she doesn't get M. Yeah, the settings of this movie are very good, I think. Aside from, so like the opening sequence, I really like that. Then we get, well, the next one that I really like is I don't know if it's Kazakhstan. I might be wrong on that. Maybe it's a different place. It might have been Arjmanistan. I don't remember. I might be making up a country. Where basically we see the oil fields, like where they're mining for the oil. I really like that scene. I think it's just cool to like get a different, like, we don't normally see that in a Bond film, so or any films really. So I really liked that, being able to see that. The budget on this movie, I don't exactly know what it was, but I feel like there was some scale to this movie. Like, we got to see a lot of stuff, I felt like. Maybe the movie like drags a little bit. I was trying to do the pros, but like maybe the movie drags a little bit when we get like to that bunker where they have the nuclear weapon or whatever, and that's when we get introduced to Denise Richards. That drags a little bit. Like, I think they could have probably made that a little bit better. Also, the extras aren't exactly the greatest actors, or at least the lines that they're given are very wooden. They don't even sound like real people sometimes. So I guess that's a knock on the movie. Overall, I think what carries this is Brosnan's performance, the fact that Elektra turns out to be a villain. Renard, I didn't mention him. He's pretty good. He's not like for me, just off the top of my head, villains that I would say are better. Le Chiffre's better. Silva's better, and those are two top ones. Alec Trevelyan, Yanis, he's better. But Renard's not bad. I would say he's just above the average, where I don't exactly know where you'd rank him. I'd like to rank the villains after I get done ranking the movies. But he's solid. Like, there's some really good lines in here. Like, I like when James, I mean, one of my favorites is basically when James, basically, what does Renard say? He's like, something about death or whatever. He's like, he's like, I'm already going to die or whatever. Or, I'm already dead. And James goes, haven't you heard? So is she. And he's like, no, you're lying. And he's just like, he's like, yeah, I killed her. It's pretty good. And then when he finally like presses that switch, or turns that switch and reverses it looks like a missile, but it's not a missile. It's basically like the firing pin that they use to arm it, I guess, to make it nuclear, the submarine. When it gets fired back in Renard, I just love how he's like, before he does it, he's like, she's waiting for you, and then he does it. That's classic Bond lines in my opinion. And I like the way Pierce Brosnan plays it, where he's not like, just joking, having the time of his life. He's like seriously like kind of upset and kind of over this crap, and he's just like, I'm just enjoying that. I'm getting back at you for this. Also, Elektra's very sexy. As far as like sexiest Bond girl, she's up there. I don't exactly know where she ranks. I'll have to do that at a certain point. When I would say, because there's a difference between best Bond girls and sexiest. Because like, even though I do think like the girl that plays Natalia in GoldenEye is very sexy, the way they have her dressed, she wouldn't probably be up there for me because there's been some hotter Bond girls. But as far as how she portrays a Bond girl, I think she's up there with the best. I think she's top 3 probably. But Elektra, even though she's not, when I say Bond girl, you would have to just say the Bond women that are attractive, that are meant to be love interests for James, good or bad. And I would, for World Is Not Enough, I would throw 2 of them in there. I would use Elektra and Christmas Jones. Christmas Jones is really bland, although Denise Richards is a very sexy woman, but Elektra is like exotic and she's more sexual. It feels like, but I like the way her character uses that as a weapon because, my opinion, as a guy, that's like, when I look at women, that's like one of their most powerful weapons is their sex, being able to seduce a guy to do what you want. And yeah, James I think handles that really well. That at first he's like, I can't do that, I can't stay, and then eventually he comes back and she's like, I'm scared or whatever, and he stays with her. But yeah, overall, Valentin Sukovsky comes back. Robbie Coltrane, I really liked him in this performance. I think they made the most out of his scene in GoldenEye, but as far as like World's Not Enough, I like that they gave him a little bit more. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think the guy's name is Goldie, but in this one he's Mr. Bullion, I think is his name. He's fine. Like, I don't know, he's memorable in the sense of the way he looks, but he doesn't really do anything all that cool. The plot of this film, I liked it. To me, this is one of my favorite plots in James Bond because it makes sense that she has an oil pipeline, and basically she is trying to rig it and set it up as if it's Renard and these terrorists or the Russians are trying to do this to wipe out her pipeline, but in actuality she's going to, mess up Istanbul and that area. That way the oil has to be pumped through her pipeline and she makes a lot of money. She don't really care who dies. I mean, to me it makes sense. And yeah, she's trying to get revenge on M, and like I said, I like that personal touch to the revenge plot. I don't know if this is the last time we see Q, Desmond Llewellyn. He dies after this movie. It is kind of a perfect trade-off to John Cleese. Like I said in Die Another Day, I just wish that we would have got John Cleese as Q for like Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. I wish they would have just kept him instead of being like, because they kept M, they kept Judi Dench. I just wish they would have kept him because I thought, as far as someone to carry on that role from Desmond Llewellyn, I thought he did a good job. The glasses are probably my favorite gadget in this movie. I think it's cool to walk around and just have X-ray glasses. I think that's awesome. We don't really get to see much of the car. The car just makes a quick appearance when he's driving to Elektra the first time, and then he has it at the docks or whatever, the caviar spot for Valentin. We see his car get chopped in half, and that's pretty much it. He takes down one of those helicopters, which, by the way, those helicopters are really cool. I think they were trying to use them in GoldenEye originally. They were going to use some sort of helicopters, and they took it off, and then they brought them in here. I think they're cool, but I remember mostly from the game having to do that level, and it was frustrating. But I think I've talked about everything. I don't know. Overall, where I rank this movie, you'll see. But this movie's, just, for me, I feel like it's got to make my top 10 just because I don't have a whole lot of real negatives, and I enjoy watching Pierce Brosnan be James Bond. I think Connery does the best as far as portraying the character, because I've said it many times, he does the best at going from very lethal to like charming a woman, and I feel like he can turn it off real quick. And there's times where he's dealing with women where he can turn it off and be like, I'm ready to hurt you if you don't give me the answers I need. Connery, I feel like, does it the best. Pierce Brosnan would probably be second. Daniel Craig, I don't think he does the charming part as well, but he's probably more believable because we get into more of his emotion than any of the other Bonds. But Pierce is my personal favorite. He's the Bond that I grew up with, so he's my James Bond. Roger Moore, I think, is fine. He can do some stuff well, but I just think it was the era of when they were making Bond movies for him that they just made him a little too lighthearted for me. A little too light. Pierce Brosnan's Bond movies, to me, are the perfect tone of a Bond movie. It's serious enough, but it's still like we're having a good time and we still make jokes, stuff like that. Craig's movies a little bit too serious. Like I just watched No Time to Die this morning, and No Time to Die, it's not a terrible movie. It's shot really well, cinematography, but it just takes itself a little too seriously. It's just a little too heavy. A little too heavy. I don't need that for a James Bond movie. Anyway, I rambled, but lastly, I'll give my ranking for World Is Not Enough. I will give this a buy it, own it. For me, I was going to say masterpiece walking into this movie after rewatching it. It's not a masterpiece. There's not something that I'm like, you have to see this movie. But for me, if you're a Bond fan, this is like quintessential Bond. Buy it, own it. For me, it is. So that's it for my review. The next one I'll be putting up as License to Kill. That's a movie that when I initially started this whole Bond sequence, I watched the first 2 Timothy Dalton movies. So I'm basically just going to watch a recap on YouTube and then like basically try to remember everything I can. Because I don't really want to rewatch it. Although I will say, I did like License to Kill a lot more than I liked Living Daylights. But that'll be the next one I review and put up. And see you guys on the next one. Peace!